A common label for games lately is Soulslike. It seems like anytime there's a game that comes out that has crazy intense boss fights or even just like a suggestion of a parry system, it automatically gets hit with that label. But I kind of wanted to know, like, what is it that makes a Soulslike an actual legitimate Souls-like? And it definitely seems like there are a lot of arguments all over the internet about some of the finer details, but there are definitely some agreed upon features for this game type, like the checkpoint system, respawning enemies, and then obviously the frequent intense boss fights. Now, with Wuchang Fallen Feathers, this game was essentially labeled a Souls-like from the very first trailer that dropped. I know I definitely thought that, and I know a lot of people that thought that as well, but I wanted to know if this actually was a Souls-like game or if it was just getting called one with no basis to that. So we're going to go through some of my first impressions with the game and then also how exactly it checks off those boxes. Starting off with a big one, the checkpoint system. Like the Sights of Grace in Elden Ring or the Stargazer in Lies of P, Wuchang has shrines that you offer blood at to actually activate, and then once they're activated, there are quite a few different options that you have at the shrine. One of those is to actually use it. This is the option called Enter the Dream, and this is what resets the enemies and refills your health and your health item. It is also what is needed, it says, to progress the story. So I'm assuming maybe a little later things happen only if you hit Enter the Dream. I did notice that the shrines feel like they are definitely spread out quite a bit, which sucks because if you're someone like me and not that great at the games, you die a lot. And that means you're gonna be doing a lot of walking in between the shrines. So it is definitely worth it to explore a little bit off the beaten path because there are hidden optional areas where you can find additional shrines that give you very helpful respawn points in between your journey. Also, yes, the Entering the Dream resets the enemies, though like all the other Souls games, it doesn't necessarily reset the bosses or mini bosses or even just some of the stronger enemies. Importantly though, Entering the Dream also does not reset your madness. This is a very big mechanic in the game, so I will be talking about that later. FromSoft and Souls-like games are pretty often known for their very large and sometimes confusing layered map system. Wuchang is no different. There are lots of interconnected areas. Exploration will only help you in the long run. I found out pretty early on that I really need to take my time to explore, primarily because A, you get to find a lot of those hidden shrines, B, it helps you a lot in opening up pathways and shortcuts, especially with the doors that can only be unlocked from one side, or just interactions with the environment so you can like knock down ladders or gates or whatever. Yes, sometimes they do lead to dead ends, but they also can lead to items or NPCs. I really like exploring games and their worlds in their entirety, so it felt really nice to primarily be rewarded for that. Like the dead ends were very few and far between and they didn't bother me when I found them. Plus, when you talk to the NPCs, a lot of them will actually give you things, and it is always nice to receive a present. Here is where the fun and, of course, the frustration begins. The devs stuck to the tried and true method of stamina-based combat, so if you are a longtime fan of the series, this will feel insanely familiar to you. I personally feel like the stamina gauge makes a lot of sense, like in terms of its usage corresponding with the type of weapon that you're using. Like my light weapon combos used enough of my stamina, and the heavy attacks or the special attacks obviously used more, and that coincided with whether or not I was using, like, say, a longsword or my great axe. But I think the combat feels really good. It's very fluid. It's also pretty varied. Each of the different weapon types have different base attacks, and then they also have different special attacks that are assigned to each one. Normally, I am a person that really loves fast combat. I like moving constantly during a battle, but obviously with stamina-based combat, that often is not the best strategy. So surprisingly, one of my favorite weapons to use in the game is actually the great axe. I think this is just because it's a slower weapon, so it is forcing me to be more deliberate with my movements, which I am terrible about. It sucks because stamina is obviously a core mechanic within the game, and I like forget that it's there constantly. All I do is panic dodge. That being said, the boss fights feel good, you know? Like they just feel excellent and rewarding, which is also important. They've definitely been intense. Some of the boss fights have used the whole damn arena, or I'll just like randomly walk down a pathway and I have found myself with a mini boss, which I'm sure is a very familiar feeling for those of you that are longtime veterans of Souls games, but for me, it is not normal. But everyone that I've run into has been a very fun fight, like legitimately fun, even though some of them have been frustrating. And I definitely used to be one of the people who were like, I don't understand why you would play as Dark Souls games. But then I started to play Souls games, and you know what? I get it. Like I get it. Overcoming those challenges is just such a rewarding feeling, and I genuinely did not understand how much of an adrenaline rush that I would get when I was like so close to getting somebody down. And then I was like constantly in my head being like, don't panic, don't get greedy, don't do this, don't do that, like it's gonna be okay. And when you nail it, it just feels so good. So I totally get it. It is very fun to be presented with something that is a challenge that really makes you work and think for the strategy that is going to be the best for you to use in each scenario. I feel like a lot of the times now I am used to games where I'm basically just running and getting my way through it. This game and Souls games just kind of force you to be more deliberate with your actions, and I'm finding that I actually enjoy that quite a lot. Even like if we ignore the boss fights, the run-of-the-mill regular respawning enemies, those fights all feel pretty good too. I have run into a couple of very annoying ones that I am just not a fan of, like these guys. They're just fast and annoying, but all of the enemies that I have run into have been either very basic, easy fights, or they have been groups of enemies, which forces me to try and pay attention to each enemy type's attack patterns. Because I mentioned that I'm a big fan of dodging. Dodging actually does serve a purpose in this game. When you land a perfect dodge, which is called shimmering in Wuchang, these grant you stacks of Skyborn Might. Skyborn Might is what you need to cast spells, and you can also use it to launch your weapon special attacks. You can use those attacks normally, but using them with a stack of Skyborn Might makes them more powerful, so it's better to use them that way. You can, of course, get Skyborn Might in other ways other than just dodging. There are items or skills that you can unlock that will help gain stacks, but I honestly feel like I didn't have a hard time either maintaining a constant stack or easily gaining it back, so I feel like it's not something that I necessarily have to worry about, at least with the build that I've got going on. And you may be wondering, because it is such a big thing in these games, what about parrying? This game doesn't have parrying per se. There are skills that you can unlock for certain weapon types. One of those is called Deflect, and then one of those is called Clash. Those both rely on still having perfect timing. Blocking at the perfect time earns you Deflect, and attacking at the perfect time earns you Clash. But these are dependent on the weapon types and obviously having the corresponding skills unlocked. Great Axe. I haven't used any of these skills because I am using the axe. It has an innate block ability, but it's not the same. It doesn't function the same, really. It blocks, I think, about 85% of the damage you take. So it just depends on really what your preference of weapon is, first of all, and then how exactly you want to play. I am very happy with the combat system. I think it's very fluid. The movement is all really nice. And there's also some skills that are visually cool, which just adds a nice little something to the fights. Something that is obviously important in all games are the mechanics, and Wuchang has a lot of mechanics. There is so much to remember. Luckily, If there is a menu for the thing, there's help text explaining what the thing is or how you can use the thing. So it's kind of hard to forget really what everything does. But because there are so many, I will just do a very brief touch on the ones that I've encountered so far. I don't know if there's more, but I feel like I have hopefully gotten through the bulk of them anyways. So at the shrines, you get a fancy little set of menu options. One of those is Enter the Dream, which we talked about earlier, but the other ones that at least I have unlocked are the Impetus Repository, which is your skill tree, Invoke, Benedictions, Warehouse, Fast Travel, Temper, and I think there's one more that I haven't unlocked yet, or at least at the time of this recording. For the Impetus Repository, your skill tree, it is pretty big. A lot of the times with large skill trees, I feel like I suffer from decision paralysis because I want to make sure that I'm making a good decision with my skills. And when it's the first time you're playing a game, I have no idea what the good decisions are. Luckily, the devs thought of this and must just love us because they made it free to respec your character, which you can do at any time. So have no fear, you can try out multiple weapons, multiple skills, it's gonna be great, no worries there. Benedictions are essentially weapon enhancements. They're stones that you can slot into your weapons for different bonuses or buffs. Much like the Jade Pendant, which is an item, that is an enhancement for Wuchang. So you can equip 3 of those at a time. I'm mentioning it because it's nice if they work together. You want them to like work. Unlike the Jade Pendants though, which are managed in your inventory, Benedictions can only be swapped out at a shrine, so that's why it is part of that menu. There is another one that kind of works together with those other two called Tempering. This is where you will take different needles and equip them in your Temperance menu to give yourself additional bonuses or buffs that work with your weapons. Ideally, you want all 3 of those things to work together in a nice cohesive fashion to gain the most benefit from them. The big one that I mentioned earlier, madness. It is the biggest mechanic in the game, without a doubt, very, very important, to the point that it is tied obviously within the story. At the core of the story, you, Wuchang, you wake up and you find out that you are afflicted with something called the feathering disease. Every NPC you talk to mentions this, so you will never forget that you are afflicted with this disease. Do not worry. Early in the game, you will learn that everyone afflicted with the feathering disease eventually loses their sanity and becomes a threat to everyone around them, so people are understandably quite wary of you. Wuchang's madness primarily increases as she kills humanoids and then will also decrease as she kills feathered beings. That's not the only way you can increase your madness. You can increase it just by straight up dying, which I have done a lot. Or you can use another one of the shrine menu options called Invoke, which is essentially where you trade your sanity for items. This only works as long as you have sanity to spare. So if you're at 100% madness, you can't obviously trade any sanity. You have none left. Now you may be wondering, understandably, why on earth would you want to increase your madness? But it does actually have a benefit. There are some skills that are only usable or stronger at certain percentages of madness. And then also your damage output is increased with your madness level. Of course, that has a reverse effect as well. The damage you take is also increased, so it's a very high risk, high reward scenario, and one that I do not have a lot of experience with using because I am trying to avoid increasing my madness level at all costs. Once you're at 100% madness, the next time you die, your inner demon will spawn at the site of your death. Your inner demon will come to attack you. If you kill your inner demon, you get all of your red mercury back and your madness resets to 0. If you don't do that and you die to her, you lose all your red mercury, but your madness is still reset to 0, so it's just starting over from ground zero. I have luckily only encountered her once, and I found out that you cannot fall in the water because you die. And when I did that, that was the death that spawned my inner demon. So when she saw me, she sprinted right towards me and also fell in the water and died. So it was a perfect, perfect scenario for me. Now, obviously, there are some things that I didn't mention that helps a Souls game be what it is. They have some pretty extensive lore that is oftentimes found through boss fights / boss descriptions, item descriptions, not necessarily in the straightforward narrative storytelling way. That seems to be the case so far with Wuchang. There's also the NPCs and their like unlockable hub area. There's branching quest lines, different endings, so on and so forth. So I feel like Wuchang is hitting on everything. So that's what makes me feel confident in saying that yes, this game is definitely a Souls-like. And I'm really enjoying it. I enjoyed it from day one. I know there were some performance reviews on PC. I saw all of the Steam reviews. I was just very lucky in the sense that I didn't have any of those problems. There were some massive screen tearing issues in the beginning cutscene and then sometimes a little bit during my gameplay, but I didn't have any stuttering, I didn't have any lagging, luckily no crashes. So again, I think I just got very lucky because I was playing on, not ultra, but I was playing on high graphic settings and I didn't really run into any problems, or at least nothing that was game breaking or affected my enjoyment in any way. Also, what I thought was really cool is Lindsay and 505 Games, the developer and publisher, put out a patch pretty much immediately to address those performance issues. So it seems like they're actually actively paying attention to their player base and listening to their concerns, which is always nice to see. Importantly, I think the story is also interesting from just my personal tastes. You're a former pirate, which is like big win for me, who wakes up with amnesia. You've obviously got this feathering disease, and it's set during the period of the late Ming Dynasty, obviously with some supernatural and fantasy elements, but I actually really like that. I like when it blends pockets of realism with the supernatural aspect. It can create really cool tie-ins if it's done well. So far, it seems to be doing it pretty well, but I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know like how everything will wrap up in the end. Of course, I would love to know what you guys are thinking. If you've played the game, what are your thoughts so far? Are you liking it? Have you beaten it? Did you like the story? Like I said earlier, I don't really play these types of games. I think I've played a bit of Elden Ring and a bit of Lies of P, and I think that might be it. So if these types of games are your bread and butter, I will happily take any tips or advice that you might have. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next video.